Hey everyone, I'm back. I wanted to make another video for you guys as I really have nothing else better to do in the holiday season. Please excuse the background noise or a lot of things going on. But I decided that I had this in the back of my head for quite a bit. And I decided, why don't I go through the initial lineup for the Walt Disney Masterpiece Collection? Of course, the us VHS aficionados know this collection as probably the one, like the collection of VHS tapes from Disney that has been everywhere in thrift stores and everywhere online even. From 1994 to 1999, it's been Disney's bread and butter. Sure, it didn't last as long as the Walt Disney Classics line, sure, but that was pretty much just a springboard for to have their movies be released onto home video instead of having it be theatrically re-released. Not to mention it bringing a new generation of Disney fans into the world. So after The Fox and the Hound, which came out in March of 1994, um, in later in October, Disney would put out this new collection. And if you had many inserts around that time, it would say this: introducing the Walt Disney Masterpiece Collections. Now you can own the most celebrated and beloved film collection on video, inspired by Walt Disney's extraordinary vision. You will want to collect each treasured masterpiece, family keepsakes for every generation. But the biggest reason why they wanted to release this is for one little film that hasn't gotten a VHS release until now. On October 25th, 1994, Disney officially released their first film onto VHS, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. This followed its 1993 theatrical re-release, which was the final release it had in theaters, and it was a pretty big deal at the time to have, Disney's first feature film on video cassette. I mean, it definitely was a big deal. It sold like crazy. I think it was like over 15 million copies sold. But either way, this is a pretty big release and probably one of the most successful home video releases of all time. Makes sense considering it's Disney's very first. The one that started it all, as many would say. The print they use here is from the 1993 re-release print. That was the second time they restored this film. They initially restored it back in 1987 when the film was theatrically re-released to celebrate its 50th anniversary. But that one didn't look that great. Even many of the restoration team for Disney even knew that. When they were restoring the film again for the Platinum Collection release back in 2001. This one definitely looks better. I definitely seen the trailer. Of course, Decade by Disney, bonus feature. Platinum editions are really good, but it looked terrible. What's notable also about this release is that it does not contain any trailers. It contains an opening introduction hosted by Roy E. Disney, who was the one of the chief creative officers at Disney, or was it one of the CEOs? I forgot he was his stance, but he worked at the company for years up until his death in, I believe, 2009. And he would introduce the film along with, the many things they are planning to be released. Of course, a certain other film about a king was coming in 1995, and they also advertised their next film, Pocahontas, and talking about the great innovations that Disney has dealt with or showed off at that time. One notable thing about this release is that there are two versions. This version here, May 18th, 1994, contains the 1986 Walt Disney Home Video logo, whereas later releases, print dates like around October, contain the Walt Disney Masterpiece Collection logo. And these ones here are definitely the most common. I barely seen anyone have the later prints, unless I'm lucky. But yeah, Snow White is one of the best. It's to this day, it's still one of the most important films of our time. Back when it came out, it was the highest grossing sound film of all time, until Gone with the Wind took it. And it was one of the first film soundtracks to come out on phonographic records. That alone was a pretty big deal. And it had film merchandise around when the film was going to get released, considering that Disney and Kate Kamen knew how to schmooze. Lord knows, this film definitely made one hell of an impact. But of course, that wasn't the only movie that came out that same year, or that same day, as Snow White. Oh, before I continue, I might as well talk about these later releases. Aside from the last one, I'm gonna be showing them off from the release year they were released. You know, their theatrical release. So after Snow White, when it initially came out, there was Dumbo. Now, what's interesting about these later releases, from this to Pete's Dragon, um, these were already re-released on VHS before. In fact, I have a copy of the classics release of Dumbo here. As you may see, they changed quite a bit from the classics release to the Masterpiece edition. They gave it this Masterpiece Collection border, as well as they gave the picture a more pinkish hue, which I'm not gonna lie, I'm into it. And what's interesting is the spine. This is probably the most notable thing about the Masterpiece collections, in my opinion. Their spines. They'll have this border around it, the Masterpiece collection on the top, logo in the middle, and the profile of a character on the bottom, and of course the stock number. They would use this format, this spine format, for the limited issue DVDs, as well as the Gold Classic Collection DVDs, as well. So as a result of this design, if you have a massive collection of of titles as part of the Masterpiece collection, they look really nice on a shelf. So on the back here, the initial lineup also has this little write up on the top. Basically the same as the insert we took a look at earlier. And sometimes it would take some stuff from the back of the covers. Of course, here we have, of course, the train, Casey Jr. As you may see, the crows have their own little profile. And I find it weird that they made another profile for Jumbo or Mrs. Jumbo. My apologies. And yet we still have Mrs. Jumbo here on the bottom. But I digress. Um, as for the masters, I personally think they did improve them somewhat. But let's put this out of the way for now. As for the labels for these reissues, they're almost the same. They would have a Masterpiece Collection logo there, of course, the film title. They would only do this for the initial lineup, but a few exceptions, which I do not have, sadly. Copy I have here is from May 8th of 1995. And as for the trailers on here, there's definitely many versions of these Masterpiece Collection editions, since this collection lasted for so long. Again, 1994 to 1999. Earlier releases from 1994 to 95 usually contain a trailer or three trailers, up to three. It would contain an ad for the Masterpiece Collection, an ad for the upcoming release of the Brave Little Toaster on VHS, which I own, and an ad for the Walt Disney Family Film Collection, which, you know, with all the live action titles. Um, this one here only contains a trailer for the Brave Little Toaster, but I digress. I will say this was the one VHS of Dumbo I wanted to own. This is the first time I ever seen Dumbo. This very edition. I mean, I'm glad I own that earlier version. I own like what, 4 copies of Dumbo now, but yeah, I digress. Here's the Three Caballeros. This initially came on VHS in 1983, and then later in 1987. Then it had a reprint in 1992. The Three Caballeros was one of the two package films that had South American themes. Of course, Jose Carioca became a symbol in Brazil. He had like comic books made there up until like 2018, I believe. This is a pretty basic looking release, and I will say I'm not really a big fan of the back. It looks really basic. I mean, I do like the stand here with Donald with the lady there. I haven't seen this movie in a bit, so bear with me. But I don't know. I feel like they should have put the profile, like the pictures, a bit higher, and maybe you just make the quote there a little bigger, or put it around here on top of these two. But oh well. Here's the label on this one. Printed March 26, 1996. Now, the later releases from 1996, they would usually contain a trailer for Aladdin and the King of Thieves, which will literally be released in the summer of 1996, which this has. But I can't really say much else about the Three Caballeros. Again, I barely watched the movie. But yeah, this is a pretty basic one. Now, the Walt Disney Masterpiece Collection did not just have animated features in their collection; it had a few live action titles too, such as So Dear to My Heart, one of the company's earliest live action movies they made. This, alongside the controversial Song of the South and their short film series True Life Adventures. This is definitely one of the most uncommon, as far as I'm concerned. I barely found a copy of this for years until somewhat recently, a few months ago. Um, I haven't seen this movie either. This movie barely got a release after this masterpiece collection. I believe it is available on Blu-ray and DVD, although those are Disney Movie Club exclusives, and I believe it is on Disney Plus. But I digress. I like the packaging on this one though; it looks really nice, and the blue spine here, really nice touch. Printed December 1st, 1994. This only contains the trailer for the Brave Little Toaster on it. Going into the 1950s, we have Alice in Wonderland. This was a pretty interesting release in the collection. For one, this was the first time it had a proper update in terms of its cover. Since 1986, 1987, Disney reused the same cover for the later VHS releases of Alice in Wonderland as part of the classics line. I'd show you a copy though. The one I had for years, sadly, I had to get rid of. But this definitely has better artwork, in my opinion. And I definitely rather look at this back cover than the other one. It's literally just a big square. Like, really. This tape I had for quite a while, so it's not in the best of shape in terms of playback, so I need to get a replacement. Printed September 21st, 1995. Here's a release I think I never forgot to show. I had this tape for a bit, though. Sadly, that older copy I had was in terrible shape, and thankfully I now own a new copy of it. The Sword in the Stone. Um, this was another release from the Classics line, of course. They reused the same cover, but the back is completely different. Well, somewhat different. It uses the same stock artwork of Madame Mim and Merlin, as well as Archimedes, I believe is the name. But they added, of course, profiles here, which makes it look better, thankfully. This was a really fascinating movie to talk about when it comes to its home media releases. Because, like, I feel like this movie's been kind of ruined since its Blu-ray release, where that one has been restored so badly. That and the Mickey's Christmas Carol VHS release. Oh, they're terrible. Here we have the tape itself. Printed November 16th, 1994. As it'll show itself too. Of course, at the time, Disney would give you business reply cards, mail it to them, tell us about yourself, and let me see. Your feedback aided us for the development of future home video releases, so thank these little things to for the home video release of Snow White. In fact, Snow White sorta had a home video release. Back in the 70s, there was a live, um, a live stage musical of it by Disney, and they made and it fully recorded the play, master recorded it, and released it on VHS in the early 80s. It's barely been seen. That VHS has barely been seen. I've seen it once on eBay, but it's probably disappeared now. Here we got Mary Poppins. This is probably the one release of this initial line that had the most re-releases. This is its initial 1994 release, but it wouldn't be until later in 1997, I believe, where it got a reprint, and then again in 1998. All of them still a part of the Masterpiece Collection, though. The one for 97, I believe, had a special program looking at the initial, premiere. I believe it was at not the El Capitan Theater, but the Grauman's Chinese Theater in New York City, I believe. This holds a special place in Walt's heart. This was one hell of a project he wanted to do for years. Oh, thanks to Pamela and Travers, who, of course, wrote the movie, written the original book. It was quite alright just trying to get this released. As you may see, this thing has a lot of tape in here because it's over 2 hours long. Because Jesus Christ. Printed March 28th, 1995. It contains all 3 of the trailers that came out around this time. The Masterpiece Collection ad, Family Film Collection, the toaster, etc. Here we got Bedknobs and Broomsticks. This is the one tape I have of the initial lineup. This is a later print from 1997. Starting in 1997 up until, of course, the end, Disney would re-release their, of course, their initial line. However, the most notable thing is the artwork sleeve is a little shorter. Let's see, like compare to say Mary Poppins here. Let me twist it. As you see on the top there, it nearly goes over the clear shell or the clear insert here, but it's now fully inside the case. Not to mention, these later releases would contain a proof of purchase inside the artwork, whereas these ones would have a little insert like poke out, like the proof of purchase would poke out from the top. Of course, it's not showing here since I unfolded it into the cover. Yeah, this is Bedknobs and Broomsticks and won an Academy Award for Best Visual Effects. Dallas McKennon plays the bear. You probably know him, of course, that's the voice of Gumby. So here's the tape itself. Printed November 27th, 1997. Here we got Robin Hood. This was another VHS I wanted to get for a while. This is pretty much, the artwork is taken from its 1991 Classics release. And this was one edition I wanted to get as well. All the artwork here is taken directly from its initial VHS, although I'd rather look at this one compared to the back of the original VHS. Here, let me show you. Alright, let's move that to the side. As you may see, there's like barely anything on the cover. There's no quotes. I mean, we did lose Maid Marian and the little rabbit kid. I don't know, something about this back cover doesn't look right to me. I did wish we did bring back that little piece of Maid Marian there, but I digress. But yeah, Robin Hood, underrated movie. 50 years old now, ain't that crazy? Printed January 12th, 1995. And the last of the initial lineup was Pete's Dragon. This initially came out on one of, actually, let me rephrase that. This was one of the first of 23 titles that Disney released onto video cassette all the way back in 1980. So this movie does have some sentimental value in terms of that. Its previous release was from 1991 on VHS. Of course, this was its Masterpiece Collection line. This is one of like, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, like 4.5 films of live action films that came out on VHS in the line. That half, I mean the 3 Caballeros with the, it had live action and animated segments. I like the artwork used here too. The artwork here is taken from its 1991 cover, albeit redrawn. Looks a lot better. Here's the tape itself. This is the 128-minute cut. Initially got recut to like under 2 hours when it initially came out, but the original theatrical roadshow cut was like 140-ish minutes. I'm probably wrong. Printed October 8th, 1994. And that's pretty much the initial lineup, but I might as well just throw this one into bed, considering. On March 3rd, 1995, the Walt Disney Masterpiece Collection got its first original title released in the line. We all know it. It's The Lion King. I mean, who doesn't know? It's one of the most important releases in the line. The most known, the best selling. One of the best selling cassettes ever made. This and Titanic. This has sold over 30 million copies on VHS. And to this day, you can find this movie anywhere in this format. I can't really say anything much else. It's The Lion King. You know it. You love it. Maybe I don't know. It doesn't even have the Masterpiece Collection logo on it. In fact, some later releases don't have it. This, um, let me see. Milan doesn't have it, which is weird. Printed February 20th, 1995. It does contain a teaser trailer for Pocahontas. One of the best teaser trailers I've ever seen, really. But yeah, that's The Lion King. Probably the most important, probably the most well-known release in the line. And there you have it. Those are the initial releases of the Walt Disney Masterpiece Collection. But of course, it didn't stop there. Cinderella, um, Fun and Fancy Free, Melody Time, The Black Cauldron, and of course, many of their later films that came out on VHS at that time. Pocahontas, Hunchback, Hercules, and Mulan were released as part of the collection. And of course, the release of The Rescuers with the infamous, the fact that it was infamously recalled. This collection definitely holds a lot of sentimental value in terms of this whole, VHS thing. Disney definitely made a ton of money with this, considering they've been doing it since the very beginning of the VHS market. But this would be technically their last in terms of like this big home video release, where all these movies would come together regardless of their value. Because of course, with the Platinum Collection, the Diamond Collection, of course, the Signature Edition, would just the line would be dedicated to films that are considered the very best, the best sellers on home video, etc. While there are other releases like again, So Dear to My Heart barely had a release. Robin Hood, Pete's Dragon, there's just standard movie releases, which is a shame, definite shame. But at least we still have this collection to go up on, and I might as well show off this, of course, a profile of how they will look on top of each other. The amount of color these spines have makes it look really nice. I love having this on my shelf. But that's pretty much it. That's the entirety of the line. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and until then, I'll be seeing you around the Christmas time. Or at least I think so. I don't know. Happy holidays!